Okay, in this section, we're going to look at a couple of concepts. First of all, we'll look at the difference between structural strength and structural stability. We'll look at what function means, but then put a little twist on it, looking at structures that have the same function but have different designs. So we'll look at a couple of examples of that, and we'll talk about this awesome word called aesthetics and a couple other things too. Anyways, let's start with structural strength and stability. Strength, I mean, this first one is pretty straightforward. Structural strength means how strong a structure is. So it's a structure's capacity to hold itself up as well as any other load that it might have to support in some way. Okay? So that's structural strength. Structural stability is slightly different. It's a structure's ability to maintain its position even when it's being acted upon by a force. So maintain its position, that's kind of the key. That means it's not going to be wobbling, it's not going to bend, it's not going to shift. Those types of things would jeopardize stability. Now, just because a structure is strong does not necessarily mean that it's stable. Okay? And I want to show one thing as an example. Probably you have heard of the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. This was back in the day, 1938, and I just want to show you a couple of things. It's a good clip if you wanted to watch the whole thing. I'm going to kind of scroll through. So this bridge is a pretty significant bridge. Here's them kind of gathering up some materials, and I mean this bridge was built with the type of materials that any bridge would be built with, right? Tons of cement, lots of rebar to support the cement, or reinforce it, I should say. And they spent a lot of time building this thing. And it is a very strong bridge, okay? A lot of strength. Vehicles driving on it, look how big it is. People walking on it. I mean, it was very, very strong, okay? But that does not necessarily mean that it's stable, okay? So check out what happened here with the Tacoma Narrows. There was a wind, a gale that kind of picked up, and because of the instability of this bridge and the way it was made, look at what started to happen. Okay? That deck started to twist and contort, and as the wind continued, the momentum of those twists built up more and more and more. I mean, look at that. That's cement. That's like very thick cement and iron and all those things that that bridge is being built with. And it's just being like moved around like it's nothing. Okay. Now this went on for, I can't remember. You have to watch the video. I don't remember how long. But anyways, let's go to the collapse. Let's cut to the chase here. That's an interesting story. You should watch it sometime. And then here's what happens. Boom. Eventually, after the bridge and the components can't handle it anymore, that force, it eventually falls to pieces. Okay. So that's a really good example of something that is structurally strong, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's stable. You have to have both components. You have to have both components in order for it to be a functional structure or do what it's supposed to do. Okay, enough of that one. Now, function, moving right along. Function just refers to the purpose of a structure or exactly what it does. Not too tricky. But we can have structures that do the same thing, have the same function, but have slightly or very, very different designs. So if you take a look at these two vehicles, oh, look at that sweet, sweet vehicle. I love that. That silver paint. All those doors, there's like 5. Yeah, I love minivans. Okay, anyway, so both of these vehicles here, their purpose is to take people from point A to point B. Okay? But their design is very different. And their design is different because we have different wants, and in some cases different needs as well. Okay? So you can have structures that have the same function, but their designs are quite different. Here's another example, 2 different types of bikes, a mountain bike and a road bike. Again, a bicycle is meant to take someone from point A to point B, get a little exercise in between. But these 2 bikes are built quite differently. We could talk about a lot of the similarities in their design, but we could also talk about the differences. Difference in tread on a tire, the thickness of the tire, the strength of the frame, the aerodynamic posture that you would have when you sit on the bike. Mountain bikes have shocks, road bikes don't. So there's lots of different elements, parts of their design that are different, which affects how we use them. Okay. Okay, so there's a couple of examples of that. Now, cruising right along, I've thrown this this word design around a lot. Just a simple definition of design. This is, whenever we consider design, and you can kind of think about this, just look at something in the living room or wherever you happen to be. The design of something is based on the shape of their parts of that structure and how those parts are put together. Okay. If you take those two things into consideration, actually you could probably even throw in there the materials that the parts are made out of as well. Okay. But design is how things look. Okay. Now, when people buy things, they buy things that will perform a certain function. Okay. But that's not the only reason why we buy something. This is a great word. It is aesthetics. Okay, you should throw that word out during dinner sometime today or tomorrow. Okay, so aesthetics, that refers to the pleasing appearance that an object has because of its design. So if you go to the mall and you're shopping for a hoodie, your mom or dad or whoever looks after you takes you to the mall and you're looking for clothes and you want to buy a hoodie, you're not just going to buy a hoodie that is warm for the winter, that covers you really well, that maybe is a little bit wind resistant. You're going to buy one that looks cool, right? That you like. When I go buy shoes, I mostly look at, besides price, I mostly look at, do they look good to me, right? So when things look good to us, that makes us more inclined to buy them. And that is the effect of aesthetics. Okay. Now the last thing we're going to do in this little video, this little section, is taking a look at, again, the design of things. In this case, we're going to look at the design of buildings and why certain buildings are built differently. So if you take a look at all these different buildings that you see, there's an apartment building. Let me get my pen. There's an apartment building right here. There's a mud hut or whatever, straw. Okay, we got the igloo. We got a typical home that you'd find in Lethbridge. You've got this home that looks like it's maybe a country home, right, out in the country somewhere. And then I don't know what this one is, but that's just a cool building. I like that. That's really neat. Okay, so there's some different things that will influence why we build a home the way we do. Okay. So I want you to just pause here and think of what are some things that would cause people to build these buildings so differently? Why don't they all look the same? Okay. What are some things that would influence that? So here are some of the reasons why. Number one, it's kind of an easy one, varying climate. So if you're in an area that's really warm or really cold, that will affect how you build your homes. This one right here, obviously the igloo is kind of the most obvious example of that. That's one that's built in a place that's very, very cold. A mud hut, you may build in a place that's really, really warm because you don't need a lot of insulation, et cetera, et cetera. The types of resources is another reason why certain homes are built differently. Again, you could look at the igloo and the mud hut. There's not a whole heck of a lot of resources kicking around, so they would use what's available. Okay. Wealth, how much money a person has. Possibly a person might be in an apartment because they don't have enough money to buy a home. Same with mud hut. They can't buy anything bigger in that area, so they would live in a home that's kind of used with cheaper, that's less expensive to get into. Okay. I'm going to throw in here, no, that's good. Also traditions, right? This is probably maybe the most obvious one to look at for traditions. I'm not sure that that's a home. I think it's some kind of a gathering building, whether it's associated with religion or just cultural, I'm not sure. Okay. But when we take things into consideration like religion, like traditions, all those elements of culture, that will influence how buildings are created as well. Another one that I don't have on this list that I'll throw in is population density. So if you live in an area where there's a very large population, then there might not be enough room for everybody to live in a house this big, right? And or this big, and especially not this big. Okay, so they might have homes that are a lot smaller, or even people that have a significant amount of money, they still would live in an apartment. I've spent some time in Japan, that's one place to consider, and a lot of people live in apartments, and it's not because they don't have a lot of money, it's because there's just not a lot of room, and that's one of the viable options for families to live is in an apartment building. Okay, and that's it for human-built structures around the world.